Hello everyone, how you going, and welcome to Who Are the Inuit / Eskimos, the world's most extreme survivors. Now, I've definitely said it before that I have no idea how anyone can kind of be nomadic to anywhere cold, let alone just kind of cold in the way that Canada can be cold. And so really, I'm just amazed, confused, and just bewildered, and I want to learn more about these people, so there we go.
Imagine you live in a city of about 100 people with a nice ocean view, but you have to wear a coat every single day of the year, where the temperature doesn't get much warmer than freezing year-round, and at its coolest, temperatures will literally have the ocean in front of you freezing over, with only 5 hours of daylight in the winter and 3 hours of sundown in the summer. It may sound like a remarkably uncomfortable existence for some, even with today's technology, but for thousands of years, the Inuit, or Eskimos, have been living this astounding lifestyle in one of the world's harshest climates.
Like I said, I just don't understand, and really I need to take it back to how many hours a day?
With only 5 hours of daylight in the winter and 3 hours of sundown in the summer.
3 hours of sundown, so 3 hours overnight. Wow, that's a very short amount of time that you're going to be sleeping. But no, 5 hours of daylight during the day in winter, that's just, I don't even understand how you get anything done. By the time you wake up and then go to sleep, you're going to be having virtually no time in between. And I can only imagine that there wouldn't actually be a very usable sunlight. It's going to be quite low in the sky. And so really, it just comes back to the fact, and like he said, they've been doing it for thousands of years, but how? I just want to know, or I'm sure this video is going to explain it, but either way, I don't feel as though I can ever have a reason to just how and why these people are able to do such a thing, because if it was me, I would have been wiped out a long time ago.
Their lifestyle, their rituals, practices, culture, environment is all of extreme interest to a growing number of people in the Western world, especially us in the United States and Canada, considering they live just to the north of us, however have been largely unaffected by the modern interconnected world we live in when compared to other indigenous Americans. And it's true that they do have a few quirky cultural practices, but are they really native there? Well,
what do you mean really native there? I mean, I've definitely heard about it in terms of quirky kind of things there. I don't even know if it was called throat singing, but I'm fairly sure it was something along those lines, and just a whole bunch of other things as well. And I even learned that Greenland is a part of Denmark. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I never knew that. So I guess just this entire culture, but just part of the world is so foreign to me, I can't wait.
Well, in today's video, we're going to be looking at the history of the northernmost people on the planet, putting Scandinavians and Russians to shame, and redefining what it means to be a human extremophile, but they also have an interesting story of their heritage as well. The origin of the Inuit people and the greater Eskimo-Aleut family is tied with other indigenous peoples of the America, but the Inuit are unique genetically and historically since they're descended from the last wave of migration across the Bering Strait from Northeast Asia.
Oh, wow, okay, I just want to quickly have a look at this, because this definitely caught me off guard, and I did not know that they were genetically, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but genetically, what did he say?
The Inuit are unique genetically and historically.
Genetically unique, okay, that certainly makes sense, but no, we've got a whole bunch of things that I won't be able to pronounce, but I guess you can kind of see, where is that? He said Asia, and I can only assume maybe is that Korea? Is that what I'm seeing there? And then that's Japan down on the bottom left here. Maybe that's what I'm seeing here, because it's so stretched and whatnot. Well, I guess that's the only thing it can be. And so to move from there all the way up to there, just look at how high they went. So early Paleo Eskimo dispersals 4,500 years ago, okay, and then all the way up to 1,000 years ago in the green. Wow, there's a whole bundle of moving going on, and I know that all of these nomadic tribes, whether it be in Australia or Canada or wherever it may be, they did a lot of movement, and that's how we kind of just spread across the entire world. And I mean, I guess thinking about it, it is kind of a very similar thing in terms of why did the Aboriginal tribes move into the desert? You would generally look at a desert and go, there is nothing there. How are you ever going to live there? And whether it be a snow desert or a hot sandy desert, there's kind of very, very similar kind of consequences for moving into an area like that if you don't know what you are doing. In terms of the modern world, would never be able to survive there without all its technology. And so honestly, it just always amazes me that these people, like I've said a million times, but they were able to survive in these unwielding conditions. It's crazy.
Since they're descended from the last wave of migration across the Bering Strait from Northeast Asia. And we could tell that some other people groups from Northeast Asia, such as the Chukchi, Idelmen, Koryaks, and other people indigenous to Kamchatka, have a strong genetic and linguistic affinity with the Eskimo-Aleut peoples.
Whoa.
However, Eskimo-Aleut peoples have a large Paleo-Amerindian genetic component, ranging in studies from 30 to 60%, which is not present in Siberian peoples. And hence, it's known that if the Kamchatkan and Eskimo peoples did in fact split from the same family, it was from Asia into the Americas, rather than the reverse, and genetic studies have found members of this group to be in between Northeast Asians and Native Americans. So they are generally considered to be Native American, but also have a large affinity with East Asians as well.
Wow, that was a very, very complicated kind of genetic code rundown, but I don't want to be the person that had to go back and plot all those dots, and even just this other one, this triangle. Where was it? This one was pretty interesting as well. I didn't fully get to see it, so I just want to have a quick look at it again. So we've got Western Eurasian, Middle Eastern, Romani. Okay, so we've got all these different things. I mean, I will admit, even though I can see that there are a few in here that I can obviously recognize, you know, mixed Latino, bloody blah, I don't really know what these ones up the top here are. Cape Colored and Malagasy? I don't know how to even pronounce that. And then Eskimo, and my goodness, it just continues. And like I said, I don't want to be the person that had to plot this, because that looks highly complicated, and really so many DNA tests would have had to been done from historical figures, and I guess I can only imagine obviously people that are surviving and are living today. But either way, the fact that these people just did massive migration, as we know Canada's a big place, and so to move from Asia to Greenland, let's say, that's a massive move. I wonder how long it took them. I think it said 4,000 years, or maybe it was 4,000 years ago anyway.
Now, as to what we call them, in Canada and Greenland, the vast majority of the community identify as Inuit, or more specifically with their smaller ethnic subgroup, with individual Inuit known as Inuk, while in Alaska, Eskimo is a term used more loosely for the Inuit and other related peoples such as the Yupik or Aleutians, and is occasionally used by outsiders to refer to all Alaskan natives, not all of whom may belong to the Eskimo-Aleut family.
Okay.
The other members of the Eskimo-Aleut family, the Aleutians and Yupik, are nearby to the Inuit, which is why they are sometimes grouped together. However, their languages are not mutually intelligible, and in fact, the many dialects of Inuit aren't even entirely mutually intelligible, as an Inuk from Alaska and Greenland most likely wouldn't be able to understand each other due to the huge distance between them, greater than the distance from London to New York.
Here we go. I just want to have a look at this map again. Look at that. So is that all the different kind of major tribes? I don't know if there was kind of sub-tribes within those plots of land that they're showing here, but really I can understand how you would have all these massive segmentations of, I guess, just parcels of land where different tribes or families, I don't really know if they had a particular name. I think he said families. Either way, it definitely makes sense that all of these massive parcels of land, even though they might have descended from the same kind of migration, just look at the size of them, and so whether they're families or just massive overall arcing groups of people, it definitely makes sense that they would develop their own languages. And it kind of just ties back to a very similar thing to what Australia had. You know, I have always heard that there was over 500 different and separate nations just within Australia, you know, every single one with their own language and kind of, I guess, culture within their entire system. And so I can only imagine this is a very similar thing, maybe not to the same extent in terms of sheer numbers, but landmass, that'd be very, very comparable.
London to New York, and the large ice sheets that cover most of the Arctic historically make travel by sea difficult to impossible. So imagine having to trek past thousands of miles of snow, ice, rock, and freezing oceans, only to make your home among snow, ice, rock, and freezing oceans.
True.
And it's kind of incredible how the Inuit traverse the entire northern coast of the North American continent. Before the Inuit culture would span Alaska to Greenland, this area was largely inhabited by another Eskimo-related people who have come to be known as the Dorset, although the Inuit are not directly descended from the Dorset and largely took over these areas once the Dorset went extinct. Interestingly, it's been found that the Norse actually arrived in Greenland before the Inuit did, as the Inuit only arrived in the 12th to 13th centuries AD.
Okay, so it wasn't actually as far back as I thought it might be. I mean, I'm kind of just trying to draw conclusions or correlations between Australia and all this entire nomadic tribe, so by doing that I kind of had in my head that it was going to be much longer ago than it was. I mean, 1200 AD, or no, yeah, 1200 AD is still a very long time ago, but in comparison to the Australian Aboriginals that have been here for 40,000 years, and that honestly, that number just keeps getting pushed back further and further as we discover more and more. It is honestly just an incredible thing. But no, to make this trek at 1200 AD, that's incredible. And there was people before them, and so I wonder when they got there, because who knows, maybe they were there for thousands of years beforehand, and they even had structures, or I don't know whose structures they are. Maybe these are Inuit, maybe these are, oh, I don't know what he said.
Extinct. Descended from the Dorset And
Dorset, there we go. And so, I don't know, and they even said Norse kind of came up there, and so really there are so many things going on in this entire region of the world. It's kind of incredible that Australia remained its own pocket because they had, well, he's just said 3 right there.
Although many rumors have spread of the Norse intermixing with the southern expanding Inuit before the former's demise, it seems like all signs point to this not occurring, and it was another few hundred years before contact would be made with Europeans once again.
Because the Europeans are too, I guess, soft for the cold. These people are just crazy, like in a good way, but just still crazy.
Although Denmark had claimed Greenland, known by the Inuit as Kalalet Nunat, since the 11th century, when settlers first arrived, contact had been broken for hundreds of years following catastrophic climatic changes. And when the Danes and other Europeans arrived once more on the island, they mostly consisted of missionaries, traders, and explorers, many of whom would integrate and even marry into the Inuit societies, especially on the southern half of the island. Hence, it's been found today that the majority of Inuit descendants in the southwest corner of the island, including the capital city Nuuk, have significant European ancestry, around 30 to 40%.
Well then, I guess, like I said, there was a hell of a lot going on there between the Danish coming in as well, and we had all these other people that were living there, like you said, with the 3 other tribes and the Norse, and man, there is so many different things. It's unbelievable that I've never really heard about any of this history before, and so I'm so glad to just be learning about it. I mean, I might never really just grasp the entire thing about the scale of the entire thing, but hopefully a video like this just is a good starting point, because there is just so much to know, and history is just so good in that regard, but it's just history, so it covers everything. It can just be too broad and overwhelming.
Just as with other indigenous peoples of the Americas, once contact was made with Europeans, roughly 90% of the entire Inuit nation died from old world diseases. Rather shocking considering the extreme distance between many Inuit settlements, but it would appear that, unlike other areas, the Inuit homeland, known today as the Inuit Nanangat, was not encroached upon significantly by outside settlers, and even if they were, most of the time they integrated into the Inuit society rather than the other way around, which is why they were able to preserve their culture and way of life over such a huge swath of land.
Yeah, right.
Another case of colonial rule over the Inuit, or Eskimos, was the Russian territory of Alaska, of which the Inuit...
And then the Russians come in. There is so many different components. It's insane. I just want to take it back because I know that I said it before, but I've never considered Greenland to be part of that entire kind of belt of, I mean, I guess it's all kind of one big landmass, but really considering once the map unfolds, Greenland and Canada are quite split apart in that regard. Yeah, so I just want to come up here and have a look. I mean, actually, I guess they are pretty darn close, but once the world kind of isn't completely dysmorphed around a globe, or around a flat surface, I should say, then it definitely would be way closer. But really, I just have always considered Greenland to be so separate, and then Canada all the way over there. But I guess it's considering I never really have gone much above here. I've never come all the way up to the basically North Pole, and so yeah, that's just crazy. They are so close.
Another case of colonial rule over the Inuit, or Eskimos, was the Russian territory of Alaska, of which the Inuit in the north actually only made up a minority of the indigenous people of the territory. But the Yupik and Aleutians in the south had heavy contact with Russian missionaries and merchants, which is why a large percentage of Aleutians and other Alaskan natives have partial Russian ancestry.
See, and then we just dive even more. I mean, this video is kind of just starting to go over my head because there's so many bits and I can't pick it all up, but really, like, the fact that the Russians were involved and the Danes were involved and there's so many different things, and then, I don't know, I guess the British eventually came in because, like I said, they're a little bit too soft for the cold. And so in saying that, I wonder when a photo like this was taken, because I can only assume that's in relation to the Russians. So I don't think he said a time period, but either way, like, it has to be within photography time period.
Another interesting case are the Nunatu-Kavut people of Labrador in eastern Canada, who are similar to the Métis in that they identify as a part of the First Nations of Canada, yet have significant European ancestry as well. Although it seems like pure-blooded Inuit may have certain genetic advantages over other groups of people, such as their adaptation to consuming large amounts of fat due to their reliance on fish, seals, and other seafood. Which...
Yeah, true. And I can only assume, in the same way that I've heard that Sherpas have certain adaptations in terms of being able to survive with altitude and whatnot, I can only assume that they would have had some kind of adaptations to be able to survive in the cold and, like they said, the diet that they were on. But I mean, obviously, either way, everyone's going to be having to wear some kind of thermal jackets, not kind of modern thermal jackets, but just puffer jackets if you want to call them that. I mean, I guess actually they would be fur, but no, either way, you would certainly just, the conditions that you were in, I just cannot understand. And so you have to have some kind of adaptation, surely, and it certainly makes sense if you're going to be there for a long enough time period. People do evolve.
This genetic selection from 4,000 years of living on the northern fringes of the Americas and 20,000 years of living in the Arctic have made...
There we go. So I was wondering how long it had been, but 20,000 years. Wait, I want to hear it again exactly what you said.
To their northern fringes of the Americas. This genetic selection from 4,000 years of living on the northern fringes of the Americas.
Northern fringes of the Americas, and then moving into the Arctic for 20,000.
20,000 years of living in the Arctic have made the Inuit some of the most hardened people in the world for this type of environment.
Although, absolutely, like I was saying, you have to have it, but it makes sense.
Although this is still not quite as impressive as the Yaghan from the island of Tierra del Fuego in the far south of the continent, but that's a topic for another day.
What?
The climate inhabited by the Aleutian...
I'm so confused. Was that a segue to it? Wait, what did he say?
As the Yaghan from the island of Tierra del Fuego.
Oh, okay, so he just made a complete jump. I was going, did I miss something there? But no, he went literally from absolute north to absolute south right there.
An interesting fact about the Aleutian Islands, they were actually the only territory in North America to be occupied by Axis forces during World War II, with the Japanese taking over the easternmost islands for a time.
Cold. Because just imagine being the Japanese having to go over there. You're not Inuit at all. You haven't had 20,000 years of history to have adaptations to make you feel less cold or have a better diet or whatever it may be. You were just kind of slap bang in the cold. 1 month you're here, the next month you were there, and man, they would have been freezing.
The Aleutian Islands now are actually some of America's most diverse regions, with a relatively large percentage of European, African, Latino, Asian, mostly Filipino.
And so yeah, we got Eskimo, other I went to say American because that's sort of like an autofill. Amerindian? I can't say I've ever heard of that word before, but hopefully I pronounced it okay. And then white, and then Asian as well, mostly Filipino, which is interesting.
The Inuit homeland, stretching from Alaska to Nunavut to Greenland to northern Quebec, takes up a total land area of nearly 1.9 million square miles, or 4.8 million square kilometers, which, for comparison, is larger than India, Mexico, any country in Africa, and the entire European Union. However, with a population of only 130,000 people, this gives it the lowest population density of any region on Earth other than Antarctica, which makes sense considering it's one of the most inhospitable places. Yeah. Even the Sahara Desert is more densely populated.
Like I was saying, I mean, I made the comparison to Australia, but it's sure to go to the Sahara as well. These deserts, they're just deserts. No matter if they're cold, they're hot. I mean, they both kind of get cold, but really, no matter whether there's snow or just sand, it just is completely inhospitable. And so I guess in comparison to Antarctica, I guess no one ever really made it there. It was just a little bit too far to migrate to. But either way, just the fact that these people are basically living in the same conditions, same things, you know, same animals to worry about and also to diet from. And man, there were just so many things going on there. It's just impressive.
In fact, Ellesmere Island, in between Canada and Greenland, an island the size of Great Britain, has less than 200 humans living on it.
Wow.
And neighboring Devon Island, the size of Sri Lanka, has literally 0 inhabitants, making it the largest uninhabited island in the world.
Devon Island is actually used as an analog for the Martian surface in training programs. Wow. I can only assume that that is probably during summer, considering if it was during winter, it'd probably be half a kilometer under snow. But look at that. I mean, I can only assume that they don't really need the spacesuits. That's kind of just more for training purposes, but that is still pretty darn cool. The fact that we can even remotely begin to try and replicate Mars on Earth just up here, I mean, it certainly says something about this entire area.
When including all those who could be considered Inuit or Eskimo throughout the world, there are perhaps 200,000 worldwide, with a surprisingly high diaspora of Greenlandic Inuit back in Denmark. But of those, only 50 to 60% of Inuit in Canada and the United States speak an Inuit dialect as a first language.
Oh, what is that? Oh, there's a four-way stop. That's crazy. I mean, I've never seen a stop sign like that. I mean, obviously, I've never seen the language either because that's quite incredible and quite unique to that entire area. But I just am more drawn to the entire bottom stop sign because you've got a stop sign on a stop sign, I can only assume, and then you've got all the stop signs just showing that no, every single way is a stop sign. I mean, to be honest, I feel as like considering you've got electricity right there, you might want to do traffic lights, but I don't even know. Do traffic lights not really work if it gets too cold to the point like this? I would assume that be fine, but I don't know, like, is there a reason why they've done that? I have no idea.
As for religion, their original shamanist faith has largely fallen out of practice, except in some of the more remote Inuit and Eskimo communities.
That guy does not skip leg day. I mean, he might need a few more arms, but look at those legs. That is insane. I mean, those rocks are also very heavy, and so, man, whoever put that rock structure in place in the first place would definitely not skip leg or arm day. But look at that guy. That is such a perfect statue. I love it. Just in the middle of the Arctic tundra.
Although traditional Inuit deities, spirits, and legends still do have a large impact on the spiritual beliefs in this region.
Yeah, nice.
Outside of Europeans and those of mixed European descent, the largest ethnic minorities in the Arctic region are actually from Southeast Asia, strangely enough, with small but significant Filipino, Thai, and Vietnamese populations in major cities in Greenland, Nunavut, and Alaska. And as to why exactly they came to this region, which is so disparate from their own in both climate, culture, and geography, I have no idea. But it's
there we go. We finally have something. This guy was able to answer every single question and just so many facts, but finally he doesn't have any idea, and at least that makes me feel a little bit better in myself in terms of like I said, there is so many things that are just, it's kind of too much information overload for me. Like I was saying, with this entire graph back here, I just didn't even start because percentages worldwide, there's too many things and I honestly won't be able to remember it. But just once again, we have another addition to the entire thing. Now the Filipinos and the Vietnamese are coming in. I can only assume more recently, but it still has had a lot of changes. I think a lot more than Australia has. Really, we only really had the Aboriginals in Australia, and then the British came in. I mean, I guess we also had the Dutch come and explore, but they never really stayed. They went, no, I'm not staying here. But other than that, there's only really been the two, and then obviously in modern migration, everything that's not counted in terms of this kind of thing, I can only assume.
On a very serious note, the extreme climate, environment, and isolation in Arctic society has been found to have a very negative effect on the human psyche, with Greenland having the highest suicide rate in the world, as every 9 years, it's estimated that 1% of Greenland's male population commits suicide, which might explain part of the reason as to why there's such a large rate of emigration from this region.
I mean, 1% never really sounds like much because it's like, oh, what do you mean it's 1%? But when you actually consider that as a number instead of a percentage, you go, that is actually a lot. And every 9 years, not every 100 years, every 9 years. So it is kind of surprising to me how you had someone living there, or just a population living there for 20,000 years, because if you're having 1%, how does that not just completely go extinct? I mean, I guess they kind of did. So is that the reason? I don't know. I mean, like I said, I just don't understand how anyone can live there, and so I certainly can understand the situations about why it could possibly higher, but it's just a tragic thing from an otherwise completely preventable circumstance.
So from scavenging nomads of the past to the established explorers and survivors we see today, the Inuit, Yupik, and Aleutian peoples, otherwise known as the Eskimos, have one of the bravest and most extreme stories of humanity's conquest over nature and environment, with their society largely remaining the same for the past few thousand years for many, in contrast to the ever-evolving world just to their south.
Well, then that was just a very, very in-depth video, which there were so many things that went over my head, but I just tried to be the biggest sponge that I could because I wanted to learn, and I just tried to soak up as much information. I mean, there were going to be so many things that if I watched it again and again and again, I'd just keep learning. Of course, all the stats and figures are a little bit difficult to kind of just remember off the top of your head. I think that's just a little bit above my pay grade in a way, but no, just the history around this entire area. Like I said, I'm blown away by these people that were just able to be nomadic to such an insane area, and for such a long time to have mass migrations and massive migrations as well, from Asia up to there, and Greenland being a part of it. There were just so many things, and I can't wait to pick it apart more. And so if anyone has any recommendations for more videos to check out, just please leave them down below, because Canada just keeps proving to be an incredible country, whether it be in modern aspects or in Inuit aspects that are 20,000 years old. So what can I say besides overall the country just keeps smashing out of the park, and so I just keep learning more and more and more, and I'm loving it. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then make sure to check out just any other ones we've done, and also make sure to check out the original video in the description below. Or hey, maybe you just even want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.